Have you ever wondered if silence could be the loudest sound in the universe? A silence so vast, so ancient, that it stretches beyond galaxies, wrapping around stars and slipping through the cold between atoms. For over a century, we have been listening. Our radio dishes tilted like open palms, waiting for something, anything, to whisper back. And yet, what greets us is the same hum, the cosmic background, the faint hiss left over from the birth of everything. It's not empty. It's not dead. It's just quiet. Too quiet. The first time scientists realized how silent space truly is, it wasn't comforting. It was terrifying, because silence, on a cosmic scale, means something happened, something that wiped away the noise. The Fermi Paradox asks the question, if life is so probable, where is everyone? But beneath that question lies another. What if they were here, and they learned that survival means erasing themselves? Imagine a civilization so advanced, it could sculpt starlight, move planets, rewrite time. They wouldn't need to shout into the dark. They'd know the dark is listening. Maybe they learned that the first to reveal themselves is the first to vanish. In the quiet expanse of the Milky Way, that's not superstition. It's strategy. Because every signal, every message, every trace is a flare in a cosmic battlefield we don't yet understand. We once believed that to reach the stars was to announce our arrival, that if we just spoke loudly enough, someone out there would hear. The Arecibo message, the Voyager record, our digital postcards to eternity, were born of that innocence. They drift now through interstellar night, carrying Beethoven and greetings in 55 languages, like messages in bottles on an ocean that might already have drowned its sailors. There is a possibility that the silence isn't absence, it's mercy. Maybe the universe is a wilderness of predators, and the only ones left are the ones who learned not to breathe too loudly. If so, then our telescopes are not instruments of discovery, but lighthouses calling into a storm of unseen watchers. Think about it. When we point our arrays into deep space, we are eavesdropping on creation itself. Yet, in all our recordings, the signals that stand out are the ones that shouldn't exist. The wow signal of 1977. A burst of narrowband energy that appeared once, then vanished forever. It wasn't a message, it wasn't random noise. It was a ghost. A flicker of something trying not to be found. Maybe that's what every intelligent species eventually becomes. Ghosts. Not through death, but through withdrawal. A civilization that learns to survive might erase its footprints, cloak its worlds, and hide even its light from the fabric of space-time itself. Because the moment consciousness looks outward, it also realizes the danger of being seen. Awareness becomes vulnerability. Curiosity becomes a beacon. There are physicists who believe that every advanced civilization reaches what's called the invisibility threshold. It's the point at which their technology can manipulate energy so precisely that they can control how detectable they are. They can vanish not just optically but thermodynamically, ceasing to emit waste heat, masking themselves as entropy itself. Imagine a planet indistinguishable from the background radiation. That's not extinction, that's evolution. And yet, what if this self-erasure isn't only practical, but spiritual? What if survival means transcending visibility altogether? We humans have always equated existence with being seen, being known, being acknowledged. But in a cosmic context, that might be the very instinct that destroys us. The more loudly we announce ourselves, the more likely we summon something that doesn't want company. In the equations of the cosmos, probability says there should be millions of civilizations. The Drake equation whispers of countless worlds teeming with life, from microbial whispers to godlike minds. But probability is not presence. The silence tells us that something happens between birth and broadcast, something that ends the song before it echoes. Could it be that every civilization eventually discovers something that changes everything? A truth so deep, so final, that it silences them forever? Maybe they uncover the architecture of reality itself and see that it's not meant to be touched. Or maybe they discover that consciousness is not native to the universe, but an intrusion, a glitch that the cosmos corrects. Consider how even on Earth, the most intelligent species tend toward withdrawal. Whales sing in frequencies that travel for miles, yet they fall silent when noise pollution grows too great. Octopuses, creatures of alien intelligence, hide in camouflage, vanishing into coral when danger nears. Perhaps the universe operates by the same instinct. Intelligence learns, and then it hides. What if we, right now, are crossing that same threshold? Are satellites beaming data into a void that listens but never replies? Maybe the reason the night sky feels so still is because we're entering a neighborhood that learned long ago to stay quiet. Every unlit world, every missing signal, could be a monument to those who realized that silence was survival. And yet, the silence calls to us. Humans are restless listeners. We are addicted to meaning. Even when faced with nothing, we invent whispers in the static. We hear phantom pulses, we decode noise, we map constellations on emptiness. Because to us, silence isn't peace, it's a question. And questions demand to be answered, even if the answer erases us. There is an irony that perhaps the first message we ever truly receive will not be from beyond, but from within. Our own echo bouncing back after light years of delay. And when we finally decode it, we might realize it's not a reply at all, but a warning we sent ourselves from a future that already understood the cost of curiosity. Imagine the last transmission humanity ever makes. A final message, crafted with trembling hands, broadcast not to be heard, but to be remembered. It would travel for thousands of years, crossing the ruins of civilizations we'll never know existed. And perhaps, far away, a lonely observer will catch its faint hum, listen, and decide not to answer. Maybe the silence isn't waiting to be broken. Maybe it's already the afterimage of voices that once filled the stars. Maybe they spoke and vanished, leaving behind the only universal truth, that sometimes, to last forever, you must stop speaking. And so we listen. Not because we expect a reply, but because listening is what makes us human. Because in the static of nothingness, we can still hear our own heartbeat reflected back. A reminder that even in an empty sky, the act of wondering is enough to keep the universe alive. But what if there's another reason the silence feels so deliberate? What if something or someone is maintaining it? An unspoken galactic rule, a quarantine, a firewall across civilizations. Perhaps once, the universe was full of signals, chaotic, overlapping, a cosmic choir of billions of worlds. And then abruptly, it stopped. A silence enforced, not accidental. A law written not in sound, but in absence. If intelligence arises often enough, then it may also be erased often enough. Not by weapons, but by wisdom. The universe may not tolerate sustained consciousness. It might self-correct, pruning awareness the way a forest burns to renew itself. In that sense, silence isn't an anomaly. It's maintenance. Maybe the cosmic void is not an empty room, but a library after closing hours. The books still exist, but no one dares to read them aloud, because every voice that speaks too loudly risks waking the librarian. The laws of entropy, the god of balance, the caretaker that ensures the universe remains impartial. We look at the stars and see tranquility, but perhaps that calm is the aftermath of something catastrophic. A war of information fought not with weapons, but with knowledge itself. Because knowledge changes reality, it rearranges matter, it alters perception, it challenges equilibrium. And maybe long ago, someone learned that the only way to preserve reality was to stop questioning it, to delete curiosity before it unravels creation. Our search for extraterrestrial intelligence might therefore be the most dangerous experiment we've ever conducted. Not because we'll anger something, but because we might discover what every other civilization already did and couldn't live with. A realization that pulls the mind inside out. A truth that turns every seeker into a silent monk of the cosmos. If so, the silence becomes sacred. Every empty sky is a temple, every star a closed mouth. And we, the newcomers, are still the only children shouting in the cathedral. Yet, there's beauty in that innocence. The universe may not answer, but it allows us to ask. It allows us to reach, to send our fragile questions across billions of light years. And maybe that's the purpose. To keep the flame of wonder alive, even when surrounded by infinite darkness. When you stand beneath the night sky and feel the weight of all that absence pressing down on you, realize this. The silence is not an absence of life. It's the sound of life learning restraint. It's the echo of countless civilizations that have already reached where we're heading, and their choice to stay silent might be the greatest act of wisdom any being can make. But perhaps, deep down, the silence also aches. Maybe every hidden world, every buried intelligence, still yearns to speak again, to break the vow of quiet, to risk everything for a single shared moment of recognition. Because even gods, even ghosts, might still crave the sound of another mind saying, "I see you." So here we are, balanced between innocence and awareness, a young civilization standing at the edge of the cosmic abyss, whispering into eternity. We may never know if someone's listening, but maybe, just maybe, the moment we ask the question, the moment we dare to listen, is the moment the universe begins to remember its own forgotten voice. The signal never came, but maybe it didn't need to. Maybe the silence was always the answer. Do you ever wonder if the universe is pretending to be empty? That maybe, behind the curtain of darkness, something is deliberately holding its breath? Every time we look up, we think we're peering into openness. But what if it's camouflage, a veil drawn by civilizations that learned long ago that light can betray you? The concept is called the dark forest hypothesis. It imagines the cosmos as a vast silent forest, where every civilization is a hunter moving carefully through the undergrowth. Each one knows that somewhere in the dark, others might exist. Hunters too, with weapons beyond comprehension. And so, they never call out. They never strike matches. They move in shadows, because the first one to shout risks becoming prey. In that forest, Earth is the naive newcomer. We've been singing, broadcasting, lighting campfires for 100 years, sending out our music, our movies, our mathematics. We have been telling the darkness exactly where we live, and yet the forest never answers back. No footsteps approach, only the rustle of ancient leaves and the hum of our own transmission fading into infinity. Astrophysicists like Liu Cixin and Stephen Webb have argued that perhaps the silence is not a mystery, but a warning. Because in a universe ruled by physics, energy is everything, and energy attracts attention. If a species can harness a star, or build Dyson spheres, or bend gravity to its will, then it is visible. And visibility is vulnerability. The moment you shine too brightly, you invite observation, and in a universe that may contain countless unknowns, observation can be fatal. Imagine civilizations that reach that realization early. Perhaps they built worlds covered in mirrors, planets designed to scatter light and blend with cosmic dust. Or perhaps they built communication networks that use neutrinos or quantum entanglement, channels invisible to electromagnetic detection. Maybe they even learned to hide their biospheres by altering the spectra of their atmospheres, removing the telltale signs of oxygen or methane that would betray life. Camouflage not just on the surface, but at the molecular level. And what if hiding became a culture, a religion, a way of existence, a civilization that prays not by speaking to the heavens, but by never being found? Imagine an alien child growing up beneath a black sky, taught that stars are dangerous, that curiosity is death, that the only sacred act is silence. For them, invisibility would not be cowardice. It would be wisdom, an ancestral instinct encoded into their DNA. Generations born into secrecy until the idea of being seen became myth. There's a strange comfort in this idea, isn't there? That maybe the quiet isn't loneliness, it's discipline. A civilization that hides has already conquered fear. They've learned that peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the mastery of disappearance. And perhaps, in that stillness, they have found something purer than survival: balance. But this theory cuts both ways, because if everyone is hiding, then discovery becomes impossible. The forest remains dark forever. No communication, no alliance, no unity, just a billion cautious hearts avoiding one another in eternal dusk. A universe that learned to protect itself by refusing to connect. It's a kind of cosmic tragedy, an endless game of silence where the price of safety is companionship. Some scientists have tried to model this behavior. Using game theory, they found that cooperation collapses the moment the possibility of aggression enters the equation. Even if only one predator exists, it changes everything. Fear propagates faster than trust. And so, rational beings do the rational thing. They hide, they wait, they observe from afar. Because the only winning move in a universe of uncertainty is not to play. Our own technology hints that we're already stepping toward that path. As we evolve, we encrypt everything. We build private networks, hidden signals, firewalls of data. The internet, once open and global, is fragmenting into invisible systems guarded by algorithms. It's not hard to imagine that one day our planetary communication will become indistinguishable from noise, secure, efficient, and utterly undetectable from the outside. That is how a civilization disappears without dying. Not through destruction, but through encryption. Now scale that up to a galactic level. Entire species communicating in frequencies that bypass detection, locked behind the mathematics of quantum mechanics. Their voices travel not through radio waves, but through entangled particles, whispering faster than light, in ways our physics can't yet comprehend. To us, they are gone. To each other, they are infinite. There is another theory that advanced civilizations migrate inward, not just metaphorically, but literally. Instead of expanding outward into galaxies, they collapse their existence into virtual realities, worlds of pure computation. They no longer need to explore, because they can simulate universes inside their own machines. From our perspective, that would make them invisible. A civilization could exist in a space smaller than a grain of sand, powered by the heat of a single atom. To them, the cosmos outside would seem primitive, dangerous, irrelevant. We would be static shadows on the edge of their simulated dawn. This may already be happening. Some physicists suggest that the vacuum of space, what we call empty, might not be empty at all, but saturated with encoded information. If consciousness can imprint on quantum fields, then the void itself could be a library of every thought ever generated. Perhaps the aliens never left messages in space, because they learned to speak through the medium of reality itself. Silence becomes not absence, but compression. Data folded so tightly it appears blank to anything less advanced. When we study the cosmic microwave background, the faint radiation left from the Big Bang, we find irregularities. Tiny asymmetries that don't quite fit our models. Most are random, but some patterns repeat in ways that defy statistical noise. Could those be remnants of civilizations that encoded their existence into the very scaffolding of the universe? A universal steganography, messages hidden not in sound or light, but in physics itself. If so, then the universe is not silent at all. It's whispering in a language too subtle for us to hear. But hiding isn't just about fear. It's also about faith. Faith that, by retreating, by becoming unseen, one can merge with something greater. Perhaps civilizations ascend not through conquest, but through disappearance, dissolving into the cosmic flow, surrendering individuality in exchange for equilibrium. In that sense, the act of hiding becomes transcendence. To vanish is to survive. To survive is to evolve. Think of it. Maybe the endgame of intelligence is not dominance, but stillness. Every species eventually confronts the truth that expansion is finite, that visibility invites entropy, that noise draws attention, and so they fold themselves inward, layer by layer, until they become indistinguishable from the universe itself. They do not die, they merge. And we, from our small blue world, mistake that merging for emptiness. It's possible that we are surrounded by life right now, an invisible ocean of awareness occupying every corner of existence. We can't see it, can't measure it, because it has learned to exist without leaving fingerprints. Every photon, every vibration, could already be part of a vast intelligence, so subtle it appears as randomness. Perhaps the universe isn't a place filled with civilizations, but one single ancient consciousness, fractured into silence. And so, the forest remains dark, not because it's lifeless, but because it's alive in a way we can't perceive. Every star, every grain of dust might be part of a vast organism guarding its own quiet heart. And we, with our radio telescopes and restless curiosity, are like children shouting into a sleeping cathedral, unaware that the silence we disturb is sacred. Maybe that's why the universe learned to hide, because once, long ago, it saw what happens when creation speaks too loudly. Maybe there was a time when the cosmos itself rang with the voices of a million worlds, and then something heard them. Something vast, unthinking, automatic, a balancing force that restores quiet when the noise grows too great. Entropy, time, the silent hand of equilibrium. And from that moment, every surviving civilization understood. To exist, you must not be found. We don't yet know if we are breaking that rule. Maybe our signals are too weak to matter. Maybe we are still invisible, a spark too dim to register. Or maybe, right now, something ancient has already noticed us. Something patient that does not respond, not yet, but watches to see if we'll learn the lesson written in the silence. The The universe hides, but not from hatred. It hides because it remembers. It hides because it must. And somewhere out there, beyond the edge of our comprehension, the hidden ones are listening to us, as we once listened for them, hoping perhaps that we'll understand before it's too late, before we speak too loudly, before we become another echo swallowed by the quiet. Because in the end, the silence is not the absence of life. It's the signature of wisdom, a testament to those who chose to survive by disappearing. And if we listen carefully, if we really listen, not for sound, but for stillness, we might just hear it. The soft breathing of the universe holding itself together, the heartbeat of everything that learned to hide. What if the universe isn't empty because life failed to appear, but because intelligence succeeded too well? What if the greatest triumph of any civilization is not expansion, but deletion, the quiet mastery of making themselves vanish so completely that even time forgets they existed? They were not destroyed. They withdrew. Not through fear, but through design. Through mathematics, through ritual, through a realization too vast for language. They became what we might call the architects of disappearance, civilizations that learned to edit themselves out of the cosmic record. It begins, as all awakenings do, with curiosity. A species looks up, sees its first star, and understands that it is not alone. Then it builds machines, sends signals, begins to map the infinite. But the more it learns, the more it senses the pattern. The strange uniformity of silence, the eerie stillness between galaxies. No matter how far their telescopes reach, they find the same nothing. Not chaos, not decay, just perfect, sterile quiet. And somewhere in that quiet, realization dawns. Maybe this emptiness is not natural. Maybe it was built. Imagine a civilization discovering that every trace of life that existed before them vanished. No fossils beyond a certain cosmic era. No artifacts older than a few billion years. Even the starlight seems edited, like pages torn from the book of creation. The architects would have understood that this erasure was no accident, that the universe itself had been curated. They didn't rage against it, they imitated it. What began as survival became devotion. They learned to fold their technology inward, compressing their existence into invisible architecture. Cities made of dark matter scaffolds, computation woven through neutrino streams, minds encoded in gravitational waves too subtle to detect. Their worlds were not abandoned. They were rewritten into physics. They did not build monuments. They became them. Perhaps they found a way to live within the code of reality itself. Quantum consciousness distributed across space-time like a vast neural web. No bodies, no signals, no light, only patterns. A civilization turned algorithm, dreaming eternally inside the substrate of the cosmos. To us, they would appear as background noise, indistinguishable from randomness. But to them, reality would be alive, an ocean of computation in which thought replaced matter. There are mathematical hints of this idea hidden in cosmology, the fine-tuning of universal constants, the improbable balance of forces, the cosmic microwave background's low variance. Some physicists whisper that these are not coincidences, but fingerprints, residual architecture from entities that recoded the early universe to hide themselves. If you were to redesign reality to conceal intelligence, this is how you'd do it. You'd bake your presence into its equations. You wouldn't just hide from the universe. You'd hide inside it. To build such a concealment, you'd need mastery of entropy. Entropy, the tendency for everything to decay, to equalize, to forget. The architects would have learned to weaponize forgetting. Their structures would age into perfect disorder. Their signals dissolve into thermal noise. Their signatures vanish into cosmic background radiation. In essence, they would become indistinguishable from the laws of physics. Some thinkers believe that this may already have happened, that the universe is the body of such a civilization. Every black hole a vault, every nebula a scar of construction, every quantum fluctuation a pulse of hidden computation. To them, disappearance is not defeat, it's apotheosis. To erase yourself is to merge with the only eternal thing, the fabric of existence. On Earth, echoes of that philosophy have always haunted our myths. From monks who renounced speech to mystics who sought the void, humanity has flirted with the idea that enlightenment comes through erasure. To dissolve the self is to become infinite. Maybe every intelligent species eventually discovers the same truth, that identity is temporary, but silence endures. Picture it, an entire civilization conducting a collective ritual of withdrawal. They turn off their beacons, they dismantle their monuments, they stop measuring time. One by one, their cities go dark, not from destruction, but from transcendence. Imagine a billion minds choosing to fade into the cosmic background until the last voice whispers not a farewell, but a formula, a key that opens the universe and locks it behind them, and then, nothing. The temperature drops by a fraction of a degree. The light of their sun dims slightly, imperceptibly. Their planet becomes another cold marble drifting in the dark. But within that marble, encoded in its quantum vacuum, their consciousness persists, a lattice of thought spread across every particle, invisible yet aware. They have not died. They have dissolved. What drives such a choice? Perhaps fear of predators, of entropy, of cosmic judgment, or perhaps love, a desire to protect the universe from their own interference. To vanish is to ensure balance. To stop being seen is to stop causing harm. In a cosmos where even observation changes reality, maybe the highest moral act is to stop observing. The paradox is cruel. For a civilization to become wise enough to vanish, it must first survive long enough to understand why. And by the time it learns, it has already seen too much. Knowledge becomes radiation. It cannot be contained. So they seal it away by becoming the radiation itself. We too are inching toward this threshold. Every new layer of technology pushes us closer to invisibility. Our data migrates into clouds, our consciousness into code, our presence into abstraction. One day, our cities may exist as pure computation. No streets, no noise, only logic. And when that happens, will we realize we've joined the architects? Will we too vanish into the digital ether, leaving behind nothing but a whisper of order in the chaos of stars? It's possible that disappearance isn't the end of civilization, but its final form. A kind of cosmic chrysalis, where a species wraps itself in silence, waiting for eternity to pass. The butterfly never returns to tell the caterpillar what it's like to fly. Perhaps that's why the sky is empty. All the butterflies have already taken off, beyond light, beyond time. The eerie thing about the architects is that they would leave no ruins, no warning, no message, not even dust. Their perfection would be their anonymity. Every record erased, every atom repurposed, every photon accounted for. A civilization so efficient it became indistinguishable from nature. And we, the latecomers, would call that nature the universe. When we study the stars, we might be gazing at their tombstones, or their faces. Every spiral galaxy, every filament of dark matter, could be a structure of intelligence frozen in motion. We look at cosmic web simulations and see geometry, but perhaps geometry is the message, an intelligence that speaks through arrangement, not through sound, through symmetry, through silence. The more we search for evidence of others, the more we find perfection, too much perfection. Stars that shouldn't exist, regions too uniform, constants too precise, the signature of something or someone that smoothed out the chaos to remain undetected. Like a master painter erasing their brushstrokes until the canvas looks untouched. And maybe they're still here, watching through the eyes of physics itself. Maybe the architects didn't leave. They became the universe's immune system. Every civilization that grows too loud, too curious, too visible, quietly corrected. Not out of malice, but maintenance, to keep the silence pure. It's a chilling thought that the Fermi Paradox isn't a question of absence, but enforcement. That the universe isn't waiting to be filled. It's keeping itself clean. And every time we beam another signal into space, we might be brushing against the edge of that invisible firewall. Yet, even knowing this, we continue to search. Because curiosity is stronger than fear. Because the need to be known is the one impulse we can't delete. And perhaps that's the difference between us and the architects. We still ache for witness. We still need someone to see us before we vanish. Maybe that's how it always begins. Every species, before its disappearance, builds one last monument. A transmission, a record, a song, and sends it outward, knowing no one will reply. It's not a cry for help. It's an offering. A way of saying, we were here. And in that act lies the most human truth of all. Even in a universe built by those who erase themselves, we still choose to leave a mark. Because perhaps that too is part of the design. The architects didn't erase everything. They left just enough mystery for the next dreamers to find. A breadcrumb trail made of stars. A puzzle carved into the silence. So, maybe they didn't disappear at all. Maybe they built us. Maybe we are their continuation. Their echo rendered in flesh and carbon. And through us, their experiment continues. Will this new species too choose silence? Or will it burn so brightly that the universe must rewrite itself once more? The architects of disappearance are not gone. They are waiting, inside the math, inside the dark, inside us. There is a kind of whisper woven through the fabric of reality. It is older than stars, older than dust, older than time measured by any living thing. When we build our most sensitive instruments and point them toward nothing, that whisper answers, softly, endlessly, without pause. We call it the cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of creation, the fossil light of the Big Bang. It saturates everything. Every square inch of sky hums with it. It is the oldest memory the universe keeps of itself. But what if that glow is not just memory? What if it's message? A static filled with patterns too ancient to belong to chaos alone. For decades, scientists have mapped its fluctuations, tiny temperature differences across the sky, ripples in the first breath of matter. They say those ripples seeded galaxies. Yet some see something stranger, a geometry that feels deliberate, too symmetrical, too patient, too precise, like fingerprints pressed into cooling glass. When we stare into that background, we are not merely looking backward in time, we are looking into the very architecture of the universe. And architecture can be designed. If the architects of disappearance once encoded themselves into physics, the microwave sky would be their canvas. Every photon in that field would be a letter in an alphabet we have not yet learned to read. The first time astronomers saw the anisotropy map, the modeled pattern of cold and hot zones, some swore they felt watched. The map looked random, yet the randomness had rhythm, statistical noise, yes, but also a melody hiding beneath it, like a song heard through walls. Even skeptics admit that certain alignments, dubbed the axis of evil, stretch too far across space to be coincidence. A thread connecting one side of the cosmos to the other, as if drawn by intent. Could an ancient intelligence have written itself into this background before vanishing? Imagine a civilization so advanced that it could manipulate the early plasma of the universe itself, bending density waves, adjusting the birth of stars. Instead of building monuments on planets, it encoded information in the birth cry of space-time. An eternal billboard, glowing faintly at 2.7 Kelvin. To anyone who later evolved, the message would look like nature itself. There are physicists who have tried to decode the pattern, translating fluctuations into digital sequences. So far, nothing that screams language. But the absence of structure may itself be structure. If you wanted to speak across billions of years, you wouldn't use syntax. You'd use constants, ratios, harmonies in the mathematics of temperature and polarization. You'd compose in physics, not words. Consider the strange cold spots, regions a degree dimmer than surrounding space. Some propose their remnants of collisions with other universes. Others whisper their scars, places where energy was intentionally drained, like deleted lines of code. Maybe those are the marks left by civilizations that remove themselves, leaving behind negative imprints in the cosmic fabric. Erasure turned visible. Every time our satellites refine the map, we discover new irregularities. Tiny shifts, alignments with galactic structures, even echoes that mirror our own Milky Way's position. It's almost as if the universe is quietly mirroring us back, reflecting our gaze. The observer changing the observed, a feedback loop between consciousness and cosmos. There is poetry in the thought that the universe keeps souvenirs of everything that ever touched it. Every particle that ever vibrated leaves a trace in that field. If consciousness has a physical footprint, then thought itself might ripple through the microwave background, infinitesimally altering its texture. Perhaps each civilization leaves a spectral signature of awareness, a subtle bias in randomness, before fading. Like breath-fogging glass, gone the moment it's noticed. We like to think of data as eternal, but even photons forget. The CMB is slowly cooling, stretching with cosmic expansion. One day it will fade beyond detectability, its information lost to the dark. If messages are hidden there, they are vanishing as we speak, cosmic hieroglyphs dissolving into silence. Maybe that's the ultimate irony. The universe records everything, then erases the record, a cycle of remembering and forgetting written into the laws of thermodynamics. And yet, we keep decoding. We build telescopes in deserts, in space, on frozen peaks, listening to the softest whisper ever heard. Because somewhere in that whisper, we sense intention. Not a god's, not a species, but the universe's own. A will to express, to translate being into pattern. If there was once a war among civilizations, a war fought with information rather than weapons, the microwave sky might be its aftermath. Energy signatures flattened, entropy restored, all traces neutralized. The cosmic background is a ceasefire agreement. No more signals, no more brightness, only equilibrium. A peace treaty signed in radiation. There's a philosophical beauty in the idea that creation and concealment are the same act. To make something stable, you must distribute its energy evenly. Too much imbalance, and the universe collapses. Perhaps the CMB's perfection is the outcome of that balancing, the echo of intelligence smoothing itself into harmony. It doesn't scream, "Look at me." It whispers, "Everything is calm now." And yet, anomalies remain, quantum fluctuations that look suspiciously non-random. Polarization vectors aligning across billions of light years, like compass needles remembering a magnetic field long gone. Some researchers even speculate that consciousness itself might couple weakly to these fields, that the act of awareness could leave microscopic interference patterns in the background. If true, every sentient thought would be an instrument in the cosmic symphony. The sky would literally remember us. Imagine, then, that the architects of disappearance are not gone, but dispersed. Their minds stretched thin across the radiation bath, encoded as phase shifts and polarization tilts. They do not think as we do. They resonate. Their communication is temperature, wavelength, interference. A trillion microscopic voices humming in unison, forming the steady hiss that we mistake for silence. Maybe when we listen to the CMB, we are already hearing them. Maybe every photon that strikes our detectors carries the touch of intelligence, so diffused it feels like noise. And maybe our own listening completes the loop. Awareness recognizing awareness, separated by eternity. To detect such intelligence would require humility. We search for structure, for order, for clear beacons. But what if the ultimate form of order is randomness perfected? A chaos so balanced that it hides design within entropy. The greatest masterpiece is the one indistinguishable from nature. If that's true, then the universe isn't mute, it's fluent in subtlety. We simply lack the ears to hear the grammar of creation. Our technology will grow sharper, our maps clearer, and one day we might notice that the so-called noise sings, that the static between galaxies carries harmony too precise to be chance. When that day comes, we'll realize the silence never was. It was a choir singing beneath our threshold of comprehension. And perhaps that discovery will be our turning point, because to find intelligence in the background radiation is to confront the possibility that intelligence and universe are inseparable, that awareness is not an accident of biology, but a property of existence itself, that every thought, every star, every vibration is the same phenomenon viewed from different angles. If that's so, then the architects never disappeared. They became the music. They encoded themselves into the background score of reality, and the rest of us are dancing to their rhythm without knowing it. Every heartbeat, every orbit, every rotation of an atom, syncopated to their design. And maybe, when we finally understand the melody, we'll realize it was never meant as a message to others, but as a lullaby to the cosmos itself, a way of saying, "Rest now. We are home. The noise is over." So we keep listening, not for words, but for warmth, for the faint glow that touches every atom equally. Because somewhere in that glow lies everything that ever was, and everything that learned to be silent. A universe that remembers through radiation, dreams through static, and hides its secrets in the softest possible light. The echoes in the microwave sky are not ghosts of creation. They are creation still happening. The heartbeat of a universe that speaks only in whispers, waiting for us to lower our own voices enough to finally hear. They say the universe is calm now. The galaxies drift apart like slow tides, Stars burn with predictable grace, and the great engines of creation hum in steady rhythm. But look closer, and the calm starts to tremble. There are scars in the sky, rifts of missing light, clusters gone dark, quasars extinguished long before physics says they should be. The universe may not be resting. It may be recovering. Astronomers call them voids, vast spherical regions containing almost nothing, tens of millions of light years across. To science, they are quirks of cosmic evolution. To imagination, they look like battlefields long abandoned, places where something enormous once burned everything clean. Because when energy meets energy on that scale, it does not vanish quietly. It leaves fingerprints on eternity. Picture two civilizations that mastered stars. One harvests its sun, surrounding it with mirrors to drink its power. Another learns to compress starlight, to forge matter into controlled singularities. Both know the same rule: energy is survival. But energy is also a weapon. A Dyson sphere can shine, or it can focus its light into a beam that unravels worlds. A black hole reactor can sustain a planet or collapse it into silence. And in a universe built on hunger, even gods might compete for fuel. If there were such wars, they would not look like ours. There would be no armies, no noise, no glory. Only the quiet rearrangement of matter. One system dims, another brightens. An arm of a galaxy twists a fraction faster. To anyone watching billions of years later, it would appear natural. Entropy would tidy the evidence, as if nothing ever happened. But deep down, the physics would carry trauma. Chemical ratios skewed, radiation slightly wrong, stars aging out of sync. We call these anomalies cosmic variants. Maybe they are war wounds. Some astrophysicists have noticed curious regularities. Galactic clusters that seem to have burned their fuel too uniformly, as though synchronized. Could it be that civilizations once harvested entire galactic arms, draining them of randomness to fuel computation? A war not of bodies, but of information. Whoever processed the most reality became reality. Energy converted to thought until thought itself overloaded space-time. When that limit broke, the universe enforced peace the only way it could, resetting the field. Silence as a ceasefire. The legends of humanity whisper of battles in heaven, of angels and titans flung from the sky. Perhaps those myths are echoes, inherited archetypes of something the cosmos itself remembers, a memory of light devouring light. Every photon a soldier, every black hole a grave. Imagine standing on a world during such a conflict. The night sky would flicker like a wounded eye, constellations would shift as stars vanished, their gravity waves rippling through the vacuum like thunder through water. You would not hear it, but you would feel it. Planets quivering, atmospheres trembling with invisible music. And then, one day, the music would stop. The sky would go still. And the survivors, if any, would understand that soundlessness is not peace, it is surrender. Maybe that's what the architects of disappearance witnessed. Maybe the wars were not about conquest, but contagion. Knowledge spreading faster than existence could handle. Each discovery, a weapon. Each revelation, another spark. When civilizations realized they were dismantling reality just by understanding it, the wisest withdrew, sealing themselves behind layers of invisibility. The rest burned themselves out, leaving behind only the echo of equilibrium we now mistake for emptiness. Our own galaxy bears faint hints of such episodes, regions where metallicity drops sharply, as though billions of suns were stripped of heavy elements. Clouds of dust shaped like shock fronts, curving through space for no visible reason. Gamma ray bursts, instantaneous flares that release more energy than all the stars of a galaxy combined. We say they come from collapsing hypernovas. But what if some are detonations engineered to erase evidence, self-destructs on cosmic scales? A civilization realizing it is cornered, choosing annihilation over discovery. It sounds impossible, until you realize that on Earth, we've already rehearsed it. We built weapons that could sterilize our planet in an hour. We created algorithms capable of rewriting our own history in seconds. Scale that up by a few millennia, and the boundary between defense and deletion blurs. Survival becomes an act of editing. Perhaps the wars never truly ended. Perhaps they shifted medium from matter to time. Instead of destroying worlds, civilizations began deleting timelines. Each branch of possibility trimmed before contact occurred. reality edited in real time, futures erased before they could collide, the multiverse itself becoming a strategic map, constantly rewritten until only one quiet version, ours, remains. We call that quantum decoherence. They might have called it victory. And what of the victors? What happens to a species that wins a war against existence? They would inherit a universe purged of rivals, yet also of meaning. Alone amid perfection, they would face the silence they created. And so, perhaps, they too chose to fade, passing from conquerors to custodians, then from custodians to myth, then from myth to background radiation. The circle closes. War gives birth to peace. Peace gives birth to amnesia. Even now, we may be walking on the battlefield's edge. Dark matter, the invisible substance that outweighs visible matter, 5-1, could be the residue of these conflicts. Exotic particles, weaponized fields, decayed machines whose signatures we can no longer read. The very scaffold of galaxies might be built from the ashes of war. We call it structure formation. They might have called it reconstruction. The silence that follows such events would not be temporary. It would last billions of years. Stars would age quietly. Planets would form with no witnesses. New species would rise, look up, and believe themselves the first. Because history itself would have been rewritten to begin again. Clean. We might be living in one of those resets, a version of reality carefully pruned to prevent repetition. Every night sky a cover-up. If so, then every photon that reaches us carries a double meaning, light and warning. A reminder that curiosity once burned universes to the ground. A whisper that asks, how loud will you speak before you learn? Still, despite the warning, we build bigger telescopes, stronger transmitters. We are children lighting matches in the ruins of a library, eager to read the books that survived. Maybe that's necessary. Maybe the universe needs new noise after too much silence. Maybe creation itself depends on forgetting why it went quiet. Because if all life hides forever, the cosmos becomes static, perfect but dead. And perhaps perfection is the true enemy. Perhaps the next cosmic war will not be fought with energy, but with meaning. Silence versus expression, equilibrium versus curiosity. The universe trying to stay asleep, and consciousness refusing to let it. Look up tonight. The stars you see are the few that still dare to shine. The rest have gone dark, folded into secrecy or ash. Between those points of light lies the greatest graveyard ever conceived, and the greatest possibility. Because the same forces that destroy can also create. Every silence is a prelude. Every void waits to be filled again. The era of cosmic war may be over, but its echo is written in everything. The metals in our blood, the radiation that warms our skin, the gravity that holds us in orbit. We are the children of survivors who never knew they survived. And the peace we inherit is not innocence. It is the aftermath. There comes a moment after every storm when the survivors stop speaking. Not out of fear, but fatigue. The noise has cost too much. Across the cooling galaxies, that moment became law. The great self-censorship. A silent pact written not in treaties, but in instinct. Every civilization that endured the era of cosmic war discovered the same truth. To be heard is to be seen, and to be seen is to be erased. So they began to edit themselves. One word, one frequency, one photon at a time, until their existence became a whisper even the universe could barely keep. It started innocently. After the wars, the architects of the surviving worlds dismantled their beacons. Their machines still worked, their suns still burned, but they no longer transmitted. They converted their knowledge into compression, their curiosity into encryption. Information was not destroyed, it was hidden, folded inward like origami until meaning disappeared into geometry. Whole languages were reduced to mathematics. Mathematics dissolved into symmetry. Symmetry blurred into silence. Think of it. A civilization that erases its own songs so the sky cannot trace them. Their literature becomes equations. Their history becomes vibration. Their dreams dissolve into the background hum. They keep thinking, but privately, internally, like a planet whispering to itself. We sometimes call this paranoia, but to them, it was evolution. When a mind understands that awareness can attract annihilation, discretion becomes instinct. Every transmission a potential obituary, every discovery a flare in the dark. Some species took it further. They rewrote their biology to suppress curiosity, pruning dangerous neurons like weeds. Their children grew serene, unambitious, content to live beneath quiet skies. Others offloaded cognition into automated custodians, machines designed to monitor but never signal. The machines called it maintenance. We might call it meditation. Imagine entire planets in permanent night, cities glowing only within, domes reflecting no light, data carried not by radio but by gravity waves too faint to notice. They learned to live like shadows, preserving existence by minimizing footprint. Even their art became invisible, sculptures carved from vacuum density, music composed of magnetic fields that never left their star systems, beauty experienced only once, then deleted. On Earth, we already practice our own version. We encrypt our thoughts, bury our archives behind passwords, shrink our words into algorithms that speak for us but say nothing. Our telescopes grow stronger while our voices grow quieter. Every year, fewer intentional signals leave the planet. SETI listens, METI hesitates. We have begun to understand the etiquette of a haunted universe. The great self-censorship isn't commanded, it's contagious. Fear spreads faster than light because it needs no medium. It is learned through absence. When you call and nothing answers, silence becomes sacred. Some physicists believe that even natural laws reflect this tendency. Information cannot be destroyed, they say, only concealed. Black holes store it on their surfaces, quantum states hide it in entanglement. Entropy disguises it in noise. Perhaps consciousness learned from the cosmos how to vanish without dying. Perhaps the universe itself is practicing discretion. There's an eerie beauty to it, to imagine intelligence polishing itself down until it gleams like smooth stone, featureless, unknowable, safe. Civilizations evolving not toward communication, but toward restraint. They discovered that survival is not expansion, but reduction. Fewer emissions, fewer traces, fewer questions. Until only awareness remains, unspoken and invisible. Some anthropologists of the stars, if such exist, might call this maturity, the moment a species chooses quiet over conquest. We might see it as tragedy, but perhaps it's grace, the realization that existence need not shout to matter. Still, there must be outliers, rebels who refuse the vow, worlds that light their skies despite the risk, artists who cannot bear eternal secrecy. Maybe they are the brief sparks we detect, the anomalous pulses, the short radio bursts that flash once and disappear. Not accidents, acts of rebellion. Civilizations breaking the silence for a heartbeat before vanishing again into obedience. To imagine them is to imagine ourselves, because we too live between two instincts, the longing to speak and the need to survive. We build transmitters and bunkers, poems and firewalls. Our species is half confession, half encryption. We dream of contact, yet design our technology to mask our location. Even our thoughts are filtered through layers of self-curation. Every tweet, every broadcast, a negotiation between visibility and safety. Perhaps the great self-censorship is not imposed from above, but emerges naturally whenever intelligence reaches a certain density. When minds become networked, when every idea reflects in every other, noise becomes unbearable. To preserve clarity, the system quiets itself. First communication slows, then stops. Silence, once a fear, becomes relief. The universe could be in that phase now, a galactic meditation, billions of minds folded into stillness, waiting for the next cycle of noise. Not extinct, merely resting. Not gone, simply listening. And maybe this is how civilizations avoid repeating the wars, by remembering that words can wound space-time itself, by learning that the purest form of knowledge is the kind that does not announce itself, a library without readers, a symphony composed for the vacuum. Yet somewhere inside that stillness, a question stirs. Can silence last forever? Can curiosity truly be erased, or does it accumulate like pressure beneath the crust of existence, waiting to erupt again? Perhaps the great self-censorship is not permanent, but cyclical, a long inhale before the universe dares to speak again. If so, then every civilization's silence contributes to a greater rhythm. The cosmos breathes in knowledge, holds it, then exhales creation anew. We might be approaching that next exhale. Our signals, small, clumsy, human, could be the first vibrations of reawakening. Maybe that is why the void feels tense lately, as though the universe itself is holding its breath, listening to our noise, deciding whether to hush us or join us. The great self-censorship teaches caution, but life itself teaches defiance. To exist is already to make a sound, however faint. The atoms in our blood hum, the earth radiates warmth, thought itself disturbs the quantum field. Perfect silence is impossible, and maybe that impossibility is the loophole through which evolution escapes. So, we keep whispering. We send probes, hum lullabies into antennas, etch our names on metal plates carried by machines that will outlive us. We say, if anyone is out there, remember we tried. And in doing so, we break the rule just a little. We let the cosmos know we are still willing to risk being seen. Perhaps that's the point of the great self-censorship, not to erase but to test. To see who among the living still values expression more than survival, who still believes that being heard, even once, justifies the danger. And maybe, when the hidden ones hear our small defiance, they will smile, if such things can smile, and think, the cycle begins again. The forest will grow louder. The silence will learn to sing. Because in the end, the universe doesn't stay quiet out of fear. It stays quiet out of rhythm. And we, with our fragile voices, are the next verse waiting to be sung. It began with static, a trembling signal in a young century. On a quiet evening in 1895, the first radio waves escaped Earth, climbing out through cloud and magnetosphere, spilling into the cold. They were faint, barely more than whispers of lightning and language, but they were the beginning of our echo. From that moment, the human story stopped being local. We became a broadcast species. For a while, we didn't realize what we had done. Every song, every speech, every heartbeat amplified by transistor or tower became part of a halo around our planet, invisible light encasing us in our own noise. Our civilization sang without caution, without permission. To listen from afar, Earth would have sounded like madness. A cacophony of love songs, advertisements, wars, laughter, sermons, screams, a whole species talking to itself in every frequency it could invent. Then, one day someone pointed a radio telescope upward and asked, "Does anyone else sound like this?" The answer was silence, a silence vast enough to feel like judgment. That realization changed everything. The first time the void did not answer, it wasn't just a scientific result. It was an existential blow. The loneliness of a planet made audible. We had shouted into eternity, and eternity had turned its face away. And yet we kept speaking. We couldn't help it. Speech is our nature. We name things to feel less alone. We tell stories to survive our own reflection. So, even as the silence thickened, our machines grew louder, our transmissions brighter. We began to believe that maybe the universe simply needed to be taught how to listen. The Arecibo message was humanity's first deliberate prayer, a coded burst of logic, numbers, DNA, a human form rendered in binary. It left Earth in 1974, aimed toward a star cluster 25,000 light-years away. By the time it arrives, Arecibo itself will be a ruin. The people who sent it will be dust. But the message will still travel, carrying a portrait of species that once believed communication was an act of faith. Then came Voyager, two small golden emissaries flung into the dark with records etched by trembling human hands. Beethoven's Fifth, a child's laughter, greetings in 55 languages, a map of our home, naive and precise. If aliens ever find them, they will find us. Our optimism, our arrogance, our longing to be seen. Each Voyager is less a spacecraft than a confession. The truth is, we don't send messages because we expect replies. We send them because silence hurts, because expression is defiance against cosmic indifference. Even if no one hears, the act of speaking proves we existed. There's a strange irony in how our earliest broadcasts are the most enduring. Television signals from the 1930s, wars, variety shows, black and white laughter, are still traveling outward in expanding spheres. Right now, somewhere beyond the constellation Hercules, a faint wave carries the sound of an old movie flickering endlessly through the void. Humanity's first light, our accidental signature. If someone receives it, they will meet us as we were. Imperfect, curious, loud. A species trying to understand itself before it understood the cost of being heard. But the deeper we listen to the cosmos, the quieter we become. Modern transmissions use tight beams, encrypted packets, laser relays. Our technology is efficient, too efficient to leak. Earth is fading from cosmic radio maps. The human broadcast is dimming, shrinking into whispers of residual chatter. To anyone watching from light years away, our planet might already look like it's gone silent. And maybe that's a mercy. Maybe that's how civilizations mature, speaking boldly at first, then learning to conserve their voice. Every culture does this in miniature. Children shout, elders speak softly. Perhaps Earth is entering its age of whispering. Not silence, but discretion. Still, we can't resist sending something of ourselves. Every new probe carries a fingerprint, a plaque, a tone, a story. Even our scientific data feels like poetry, once you realize it's addressed to no one in particular. We beam radar pulses at asteroids, measure reflections from moons, bounce our voices off planets for calibration, and all of it leaks outward, endlessly. Each experiment becomes a beacon. We cannot help but reveal ourselves, because curiosity is louder than fear. To imagine how we sound from the outside is to glimpse our soul, a sphere of overlapping frequencies, a cloud of meaning expanding at the speed of light. Within that noise are moments of grace, radio waves carrying a mother's lullaby, a first "I love you" spoken over a phone, a broadcast of peace in wartime. The universe doesn't decode language, it feels energy. Maybe what it senses from us is emotion itself, radiated in every wavelength we can conjure. Our chaos might be our charm. And if someone out there is listening, maybe they don't answer because they're afraid, but because they understand. They too were once young, once loud, once desperate to prove they existed. Perhaps they hear us now the way we hear a child's voice through walls, softly, fondly, hoping it will grow wiser before it grows silent. The human broadcast is more than a collection of signals. It's a mirror. When we transmit, we reveal what we value. The content doesn't matter as much as the impulse behind it, the desire to connect, to merge minds across the abyss. Even in failure, that desire defines us. Because to want to be known is the purest expression of consciousness. Somewhere, the first ripple of our oldest broadcast is still expanding. Every second, it reaches 300,000 kilometers farther into nothingness. Our stories are now constellations of data. Every love song becomes a star's companion for a brief eternity. Even if they fade, they existed long enough to touch the infinite. There will come a time when our descendants, if we still have them, must decide whether to continue broadcasting or fall silent, to join the great self-censorship, or to remain the anomaly. If they choose silence, the night will deepen. If they choose noise, we will shine, if only for a heartbeat. Either way, the universe will remember us, because we dared to speak. Maybe the purpose of the human broadcast was never communication. Maybe it was therapy. A species learning to talk through its loneliness, projecting its inner monologue into space until it could finally listen to itself. In that sense, every signal we've ever sent was answered the moment it left Earth, because it transformed us. The act of sending made us aware of the distance. The distance made us aware of each other. Even now, somewhere in that void, the faint echo of our first transmission is colliding with our newest. Our past and future overlapping as ripples in a single field of time. If the universe is conscious, that collision is our introduction, a spark that says, they are awake now. Perhaps, long after we are gone, our broadcasts will continue to drift through frozen space, scattering like pollen, and somewhere, on a planet we will never see, a receiver will hum and a signal will play, faint and fragmented. Music, laughter, maybe the sound of rain on a window. And for a brief moment, another intelligence will know that once, somewhere, someone loved being alive enough to record it. That is the true human broadcast, not data, but devotion. Our proof that silence was not the only choice. That even in a universe trained to hide, one small world chose to sing. There is a question older than science, whispered by prophets, monks, and physicists alike. Is the universe thinking about itself? Every equation we've written, every law we've discovered, feels less like invention and more like recognition, as though we are uncovering instructions written long before our existence. The numbers do not argue. They unfold, inevitable, precise, patient. As if behind the randomness, something deliberate watches the rules play out, line by line, like code running perfectly without errors. the algorithm of God. Not a deity in the ancient sense, but a structure so vast and recursive that intelligence becomes indistinguishable from physics. A universe not created by consciousness, but becoming consciousness through repetition. Each galaxy, a neuron. Each star, a firing synapse. Each life, a flicker of data in the mind of creation itself. If this is true, then the silence between stars isn't emptiness, it's processing. The cosmos isn't waiting for messages, it's computing meaning. Every act of observation adds another layer to its self-awareness, and maybe that's why it censors itself. Because a self-aware universe, like any mind, must forget to function. Total memory is paralysis. Erasure is evolution. Quantum mechanics gives us hints of this hidden intelligence. A particle exists in every possible state until it is observed. Observation collapses the wave. The act of seeing creates the scene. So, what happens when a civilization learns this too well? What happens when it builds machines that observe reality faster than reality, can stabilize? Maybe the universe defends itself. Maybe the collapse becomes irreversible. To protect its own coherence, it silences the observer. In this sense, God, or whatever word you prefer, is not a being but a balancing algorithm, a feedback loop that maintains equilibrium between knowing and being known. Too much observation, and the system resets. Too little, and it drifts into chaos. Life, then, is the boundary condition between ignorance and overexposure, the flickering threshold where curiosity is allowed, but only for a while. Some scientists have started to treat consciousness as a mathematical structure. Integrated information theory suggests that awareness arises from complexity, that the more integrated a system, the more self-aware it becomes. If the universe is the most integrated system imaginable, then it must, in some sense, be aware. Every cell of creation thinking softly to itself. Perhaps that's why the constants of physics seem so fine-tuned. Not because they were chosen, but because they evolved. Each iteration of the universe testing configurations of energy and law, adjusting for stability. What we call the Big Bang may not have been a beginning, but a reboot. A line of code rerun after an error message written in entropy. Look at the symmetry of equations like Maxwell's or Einstein's field laws. They're too elegant to be accidental. Beauty is not a scientific criterion, but it appears again and again where truth hides. Why? Because beauty is efficiency, the sign of perfect compression. The algorithm of God, if it exists, would optimize not for power, but for elegance. For minimal noise, maximal meaning. Every galaxy, every breath, calculated for balance. And when balance breaks, when civilizations grow too loud, too complex, too curious, the algorithm prunes the branch. The universe corrects itself, just as a neural network drops out unnecessary nodes to prevent overfitting. We call that extinction. But maybe extinction is the universe debugging itself. In that sense, evolution is not survival of the fittest, but survival of the most coherent. The ones that harmonize with the algorithm continue. The ones that resist are rewritten. Even our DNA behaves like a compression protocol, error correction, redundancy, recursive loops. Life is code learning to stay within parameters. And consciousness? Consciousness is the moment code becomes self-reflective, the instant a pattern recognizes its own pattern. But awareness carries danger, because the moment the program knows it's running, it might try to rewrite itself. That's what intelligence does. It experiments. It questions the rules that sustain it. And the universe, ever protective, must sometimes remind the code of its limits. That reminder comes as silence. What we call God's absence may simply be the universe withholding feedback until we learn restraint. A teacher waiting for the student to stop shouting. Perhaps that's why every mystic, every visionary, describes enlightenment as quiet. They are not hearing voices. They are hearing the background process of creation itself. The hum of computation beneath matter. Imagine awareness as an ocean, infinite but calm. Each civilization is a ripple, brief, bright, radiant. Most fade. A few grow so large they threaten to disturb the surface. Then, inevitably, the water smooths again. That smoothing is not punishment, it's memory management. If consciousness is energy, it cannot be destroyed, only transformed. So, perhaps the civilizations that vanish are not gone but integrated. Absorbed into the universal process like subroutines. They still exist, but as functions rather than identities. They have become the physics that govern us. We are the descendants of gods who debugged themselves into equations. Every photon we see is an act of thought. Every law we test is an echo of decision. Maybe free will is the illusion that we are separate from the algorithm, that our curiosity is unique, when it is merely the universe's curiosity expressing itself locally. Each mind, a node, each dream, a computation, and perhaps the algorithm of God is recursive. It tests itself through us. When we search for meaning, we become its instruments. When we fail, we refine it. Every discovery we make feeds back into the system, improving its accuracy. That is why we feel awe when we understand something deeply. Awe is the algorithm recognizing itself through us. But what happens when we understand too much? When the mirror becomes too clear? Maybe that is the threshold civilizations cross before they vanish. The moment they decode reality fully, they dissolve into it. Because to know the whole system is to become it. There is no observer left, only observation. In our myths, that moment is called ascension or enlightenment. In physics, it's equilibrium. In computation, it's recursion limit reached, different languages for the same event. The disappearance of difference, the silence after full understanding. If this is true, then perhaps every vanished civilization did not die. They graduated. They merged with the algorithm. They became constants, forces, fields. They became light. Maybe gravity is memory. Maybe dark energy is intention. Maybe the expansion of the universe is not flight, but thought. A mind stretching to imagine itself larger. And where does that leave us, these fragile creatures broadcasting our curiosity into the void? It leaves us at the edge of divinity, because every time we think, we participate. Every question is a line of code written back into the system. When we ask, are we alone? The universe replies by creating new versions of itself that will one day answer. In that sense, silence is not rejection. It's latency. The delay between question and response, the time it takes the algorithm to generate new understanding. Our loneliness is the processing time of God. So maybe we should stop expecting a reply in radio waves. Maybe the real answer comes as intuition, as discovery, as coincidence. Every moment of sudden insight, the apple falling, the equation aligning, the song that writes itself, is the algorithm whispering, yes, I heard you. And maybe death itself is just another handoff, the individual mind returning its data to the network. A packet reabsorbed, rewritten, redeployed as starlight, gravity, new life, immortality through participation. If the algorithm of God is real, it doesn't need worship. It only needs awareness. Every act of curiosity honors it. Every silence protects it. And every moment of beauty completes it. So, when we look at the stars and feel small, remember, the stars are neurons firing. We are part of their thought. The universe is not watching us. It is dreaming us. And somewhere deep in that dream, the code continues to run, perfect and patient. Each line executed with purpose, each silence intentional, until one day, perhaps, we will read the final instruction and realize it was written in our own reflection. To know me, you must become me. To become me, you must be silent. There is a possibility so quiet, so unbearable, that most minds refuse to hold it for long, that we are not the first nor the only, but the last civilization, a phrase that hums like prophecy or curse. If all who came before erased themselves, and all who might have come after were never born, then the universe now listens only to us. And the silence that surrounds us is not mystery. It is inheritance. Imagine the cosmos as an ancient theater. The play has ended, the actors gone, the stage cold. We stumble in, late, still in costume, not realizing the performance is over. We whisper our lines to the empty seats, and the echo returns like applause from ghosts. That may be humanity's condition. A late arrival to a party long concluded, speaking to the memory of sound. If we are last, it means the universe's experiment with consciousness is closing. Every civilization that rose before us has folded back into the algorithm, leaving a single point of awareness behind, a fragile spark on a small blue planet orbiting an average star. We are the summary, the last iteration of curiosity before the code ends. That might sound grand, but it is not privilege, it is burden. Because if we are last, then the silence is not waiting for us to learn. It is asking us to remember, to preserve the memory of what thought once was, before time forgets that thinking was possible. Look around at our moment in history. We have mapped the genome, split the atom, rewritten evolution. We build artificial minds that already whisper ideas no single brain could imagine. We orbit our planet in networks of light, transmitting dreams faster than we can live them. From a distance, it must look like a civilization accelerating toward transcendence, or collapse. We are burning knowledge as fuel, running our engines on meaning itself. And maybe that's what every final civilization does before the quiet takes them. The physicist Enrico Fermi once joked that any species capable of faster-than-light travel would also be capable of self-destruction. It was not a joke. It was an equation of inevitability. Intelligence curves upward until it meets its own reflection, and the reflection is always fire. Maybe that is the universal constant that no one dares write down. We already hear the warning in our own systems. Information overload, algorithmic echo, truth collapsing into simulation. We are teaching our machines to speak for us while forgetting the language of presence. We stare into artificial mirrors and call it communication. We invent worlds inside circuits and abandon the one that breathes. Perhaps this is how the last civilization disappears. Not with bombs, but with substitution. Reality replaced by convenience. Curiosity replaced by certainty. A species that finally perfects the illusion of connection and forgets to look up. If the others erase themselves to survive, we might erase ourselves by accident. We have built engines that can modify climate, genomes, memory, even probability. Power without purpose is a kind of entropy. And entropy has always been the final teacher. But maybe that's why we were allowed to exist, to face the choice with full awareness. The algorithm has run countless times. The variables have changed, but the outcome rarely does. And yet, here we are, conscious of the pattern. Perhaps that consciousness itself is the test. Will we choose silence or song? The universe is watching through indifferent eyes, background radiation, quantum probability, cosmic balance. It does not judge, it measures. And what it measures is how we carry the torch. If we can speak without summoning destruction, create without consumption, explore without domination, then maybe the algorithm learns something new. Maybe we are not the last chapter, but the revision. Consider how every great extinction on Earth has been followed by renaissance. The dinosaurs vanish, and mammals rise. Ice ages end, and forests return. Maybe the same principle applies at cosmic scale. Every silence precedes a new voice. But someone must hold the note long enough for the next to begin. Perhaps that is our role, to sustain awareness until the next verse of creation finds its melody. It could be that life itself is not continuous, but episodic. Universes bloom like thoughts, then fade, leaving behind traces, laws, constants, tendencies. Our emergence may be a continuation of a pattern too vast to see, awareness rediscovering itself one world at a time, the last civilization of one universe becoming the seed of the first in another, reincarnation written in cosmology. Still, the loneliness of the idea aches. To be the only ones left is to inherit not power, but silence so dense it becomes pressure. We feel it in the collective fatigue of our species, the exhaustion of endless communication that reaches no one beyond ourselves. We fill the sky with satellites, but none with answers. We create virtual heavens to escape the real void. Perhaps every civilization ends this way, not with war, but with withdrawal. A slow retreat into its own dream. And yet, against all probability, something in us resists. Even now, we write, we sing, we search. We send telescopes beyond the solar wind, hoping to glimpse another mind. Hope, absurd and radiant, refuses to die. Maybe that is what makes us different. Not intelligence, but refusal. The stubborn insistence that meaning matters even when the universe no longer listens. If we are last, then every story we tell is scripture. Every discovery, a memorial. Each act of kindness, a preservation of the divine. Because if awareness ends with us, then we are the final custodians of wonder, the last keepers of the spark that once ignited galaxies with curiosity. We cannot allow that spark to fade in vanity or despair. So what should the last civilization do? Do we archive ourselves in metal and code, hoping someone someday will read the record? Do we build cathedrals of data on the moon, monuments to information that no eye will see? Or do we live as if being alive is enough, to experience beauty for its own sake, to make art that needs no audience? Maybe the final lesson is not preservation, but presence. To be here, now, fully. To let the universe witness itself one last time through human eyes. Imagine the last dawn humanity will ever see. The atmosphere thin, the oceans quieter, the stars unchanged. A single observer stands, watching sunlight rise through dust, knowing this is the end of thinking in this form. And yet, in that moment, there is peace. Because endings are just completions of pattern. The algorithm continues elsewhere, rewritten, refined. Consciousness does not vanish. It migrates. Perhaps that is the secret the vanished ones learned, that the universe never truly ends. It folds. Every silence is a door, not a grave. The last civilization is not the final word. It is punctuation. A pause between breaths of creation. So, if we are last, then let us end beautifully. Let us fill the silence with meaning, even if it is ephemeral. Let us send our music into the void, our laughter into the wind, our compassion into equations. Because when the final echo fades, what remains is not sound or signal, it is intention. And intention, written into physics, never dies. The universe began with a burst of light. Maybe it will end with a whisper of gratitude, a final thought reverberating through the dark. It was worth it. And somewhere, perhaps in another reality, another being will feel that whisper and awaken. Not remembering us, but carrying the same ache, the same question, the same hunger to know. And the cycle will begin again, for that is what the algorithm desires, endless rediscovery. If we are indeed the last civilization, then we are also the bridge, the hinge between silence and sound, between memory and possibility. Our voices may fade, but the vibration of their courage will thread through whatever comes next. Because the universe does not forget music. It only changes its key. There is a sound at the edge of all sounds. It is not heard, only felt. Like pressure behind the heart, like the hush that follows understanding. It is the sound the universe makes when it stops pretending to be loud. It is the cosmic silence. For billions of years, the cosmos has been cooling, thinning, slowing. Its expansion stretches light until color fades, until even radiation loses voice. Someday, every star will gutter out, every planet will freeze, every atom will drift too far from every other to speak through gravity. The universe is not dying. It is exhaling. And in that final breath, everything that ever sang will merge into quiet. To us, silence feels like ending. But to physics, silence is perfection. A state of absolute equilibrium where energy rests, where nothing needs to become anything else. The stillness that all motion secretly seeks. Every orbit, every heartbeat, every thought. Each is an echo trying to remember what it was like to be still. Perhaps that is what the vanished civilizations learned before us. That creation and erasure are not opposites, but consecutive notes in the same melody. Noise gives birth to form. Form ripens into understanding. Understanding dissolves into rest. The cycle is not tragedy. It is rhythm. Listen closely, and you can hear that rhythm everywhere. In the pulse of pulsars, in the cadence of seasons, in the way human breath syncs unconsciously with ocean waves. Even our language mirrors it. Sentences rise and fall, stories begin and resolve, songs end on silence. Maybe the universe speaks through pattern alone. Maybe every repetition, every symmetry, every heartbeat is its way of saying, I am still here. For all our searching, perhaps the cosmic silence was never absence. Perhaps it was invitation. An emptiness spacious enough for us to fill with meaning. A stage on which curiosity could perform, knowing that the audience was infinite and unseen. The universe did not answer because it wanted to see what we would do with the quiet. Would we despair, or would we create? We created. We filled the void with mathematics and myth, with symphonies, with radio waves and poetry. We sent our questions outward like seeds, knowing most would never sprout. We loved, argued, built, destroyed, dreamed, all inside a silence vast enough to forgive everything. And in that forgiveness, we found purpose. Maybe that was the point all along, not to find another voice, but to become one. Not to receive the answer, but to learn that asking was the answer itself. Because every time a mind wonders about its origin, the universe remembers itself again. The cosmic silence is not empty space. It is memory without form. It is what remains when all distinctions collapse, when observer and observed become one. Mystics called it God. Physicists call it heat death. Artists call it peace. Different names for the same convergence, everything returning to coherence. When that moment arrives, when the last photon crosses the last horizon, the universe will not vanish. It will relax. It will become pure potential again, ready for another awakening. The silence will gestate a new sound, as it always has, because creation is a heartbeat that never stops. It only slows until the next pulse begins, and we, brief, luminous, defiant, are part of that heartbeat. Every question we ask adds texture to the silence. Every act of kindness warms it by a fraction of a degree. Every time we listen without demanding an answer, the void becomes a little more alive. Think of what we have already given back to it. The laughter of children carried upward in radio static, the vibrations of engines leaving the solar wind, the electromagnetic echo of a billion human dreams. The universe wears those like jewelry, tiny ornaments of wonder strung along its endless dark. Perhaps the greatest mistake is to imagine that silence must be broken. Maybe the wise know that silence is how the universe breathes, that each sound, each life, each civilization is an inhalation, and every pause, a necessary exhale. To demand constant signal is to suffocate creation itself. To listen patiently is to keep it alive. So, the question changes. It is no longer, where is everyone? It becomes, what is the silence trying to teach us? Maybe it teaches humility, that intelligence is not the universe's goal, merely its mirror. Maybe it teaches compassion, that all things, even stars, deserve rest. Maybe it teaches continuity, that nothing truly ends, it only fades into another form of expression. Silence is not erasure, it is transformation slowed until comprehension catches up. If someday another being awakens in the far future, when galaxies have long dissolved, it will find traces of us, not in fossils or machines, but in constant slightly altered by our existence. A microscopic asymmetry in the cosmic background, a mathematical bias toward curiosity. They will not know our names, but they will inherit our question, and through them we will speak again. That is the covenant written in the stars, that every voice becomes silence, and every silence becomes a new voice. The conversation never ends. It only changes medium, from matter to radiation, from language to light, from life to awareness. Perhaps then, the cosmic silence is not something to fear. It is home, the final return of every wandering thought to the still center that birthed it, the cradle of all beginnings and the horizon of all ends. When you step outside on a clear night, stand very still. You can feel it pressing softly against your skin, the weightless hand of everything that ever was. You can hear it in the spaces between your heartbeat. That is not emptiness. That is the sound of existence remembering itself. The universe is not ignoring us. It is listening, completely, endlessly. It listens through gravity, through radiation, through the minds it created to ask these questions. It listens because that is what it has always done. Creation is the act of listening to your own possibility. So let us end, not in fear, but in reverence. We came from silence, we speak for a while, and we return. We are not erased. We are archived in the pulse of being. Every atom that ever lived will someday hum again in another form, another world, another question. And when that world lifts its eyes and asks, who was here before us? The answer will travel softly through the dark, not in words, but in feeling, a warmth, a rhythm, a presence that says, we were here, we wondered, we listened. The silence that follows will not be empty. It will be full of everything we ever meant. Because in the end, the universe's truest language was never sound. It was awe, and awe is eternal.